nuclear reactor of fear, why Fromville needs you cracked. Father Cartry wasn't being poetic when he said broken people don't survive here. He was giving a clinical diagnosis. Fromville is a high-stakes psychological reactor. If you're too stable, you're useless. If you're shattered, you're a liability. The system needs you right in the sweet spot, fractured enough to leak emotional energy, but whole enough to keep the lights on. Today we decode why Reggie was disposed of and why the trio was taken by the music box, not as punishment, but as a system recalibration. Father Cartry wasn't being poetic or delivering a sermon when he said that broken people won't survive in this place. He was making a straightforward, clinical observation about the local environment. Fromville isn't simply a town, it's a predatory psychological landscape that operates like a high-stakes gamble. It doesn't aim to eliminate you right away, but it does require you to remain within a very specific range of instability. If you find too much stability, you become a threat. If you break entirely, like Reggie did after Paula's loss, the system seeks out the cracked for those who maintain structural integrity but leak enough emotional energy to keep the lights on. It operates within a set of rules. Harsh, selective, almost scientific. It doesn't take lives indiscriminately. If you're too stable, you stop reacting. If you're too shattered, you cease to function. Neither state is beneficial. What it seems to favor are those who are cracked, not entirely broken, not fully whole, just fractured enough to leak. Reggie was broken. After Paula's death, something within him crumbled. He wasn't unstable in a productive sense, he was imploding. His final spiral in the warehouse wasn't a moment of recalibration, it was disposal. The shotgun blast didn't just halt him, it confirmed he had crossed a line. He was beyond tension, a snapped wire. Consider the music box not as a torture device, but rather as a systemic reset button. When Randall, Marielle, and Julie were taken, it wasn't a random act of cruelty. They were all losing control in ways that strayed from the system's needs. Randall pushed against every rule and authority, every structure. He built a fortress out of isolation and called it independence. Yet beneath that aggression lay something softer and far more volatile. A fear of relinquishing control. Marielle was losing her grip on her body. Withdrawal hollowed her out, transforming her into someone she struggled to trust. Julie drifted in quieter ways. After Thomas died and her parent marriage unraveled, she began to emotionally dissolve from her own family, retreating as if detachment could shield her from further loss. None of them were stable, but none were lost. In those states, the system couldn't utilize them. An addict in a coma or a rebel living on a bus roof produces a low-quality, muddled frequency of trauma. By pulling them into the dungeon, the system performed a hard recalibration. It isolated them, pinpointed their specific loss of control, and forced a choice to adapt and integrate or disappear. When they returned, they had changed. Randall assisted Boyd, Julie reconnected with her family, and Marielle stopped stealing morphine. They were fixed just enough to be useful again. Their instability adjusted to a manageable, productive hum. The dungeon wasn't chaotic, it was precise. It isolated each of them at their moment of instability. Randall was stripped of agency. Marielle confronted her own body. Julie found herself in a space where past, present, and fear blurred together. They weren't attacked by monsters, they faced themselves, compressed, into a state where identity became fluid. Fromville doesn't seem interested in curing people, it adjusts them. If the town is a machine, then trauma is its fuel. Instability generates output. But like any reactor, it needs regulation. Too little volatility, and nothing happens. Too much, and the core collapses. The music box feels less like punishment and more like a control rod lowered into a population that's overheating or cooling in the wrong direction. Fromville functions like a nuclear reactor, with human instability serving as the fuel. In a reactor, a certain level of volatility is essential for power generation, but control rods are also necessary to prevent a meltdown. The music box acts as that control rod. If the population becomes too stable or too at peace with their situation, the power diminishes. Conversely, if they descend into complete madness, the core melts down. The system requires everyone to exist in that agonizing sweet spot, fearful enough to stay alert, yet hopeful enough to keep trying. Monsters outside are just perimeter enforcement. They maintain a baseline fear, herding people indoors into tight spaces where emotional fractures echo louder. Physical danger is predictable. You can shut a door against it, hang a talisman, or make a plan. Psychological erosion is different. It follows you to bed, sits beside you at dinner, and turns grief into distance, guilt into hallucination, and loneliness into defiance. This is why the system overlooks individuals like Sarah and Jade. Sarah is already integrated, she's a direct conduit for the system's voices. Jade's fixation on the symbols is productive because it propels the narrative forward and keeps him engaged with the town's enigmas. They are usefully unstable. The system doesn't need to confine them because they're already functioning as intended. They are losing control within the machine, while the trio was losing control outside of it. So they were recalibrated. What occurs there may not be about suffering at all. It might be about transformation under pressure, a forced pivot. Fromville doesn't simply want fear. Fear is raw material. What it seems to value most is the energy released when a person changes under pressure. Fromville operates as a machine that demands transformation. It takes the cracked and applies pressure until they either forge a new, more resilient identity or crumble into dust. It's a form of psychological Darwinism, where the reward for surviving a day of terror is merely the opportunity to confront a more sophisticated version of it the next day. The town doesn't just crave your fear, it seeks your transformation, because the energy released during a human pivot, that moment you choose to survive, despite everything, is the highest grade fuel it can find. Broken people don't survive here, but cracked people, they burn brighter.